Today we're heading out into the greenhouse and just look at all this beautiful color that's starting to emerge. Today is a great time that we're going to talk about thriller annuals for container combinations. Hi, I'm Heidi from Garden Crossings, and there have been questions on videos that I've been doing lately, and I welcome questions. And one of the viewers had asked for me to do a video on annual plants that make excellent thrillers in container combinations. So if that was you, this video is specifically for you, but for all of you who are watching today. So out in our container combinations here in the landscape, not only at Garden Crossings, but also in my home garden, I always like to use a thriller in those planters. So you may be asking, what is a thriller? A thriller is an annual that has an upright habit. Usually they're maybe 18 inches up to 4 foot tall. Obviously, it's going to depend on how big your container or planter is that you're planting into as to the type of thriller you'd be looking to use in your container. Another thing is when you are planting into a larger container, that also is going to give your plants, your thrillers, more opportunity to get larger because there's more soil volume for them to grow into and to continue to put on more growth with. So the first one we're going to look at is a very popular thriller for containers, and it is the purple fountain grass. So purple fountain grass, also known as rubrum, stands about 3 foot tall and 3 foot wide. It's got beautiful deep burgundy blades on it, so the foliage color is really interesting. Later in the season, sometimes more mid to late summer, you'll get these beautiful fluffy plumes that just adds that much more interest to the purple fountain grass. Purple fountain grass does like to be grown in full sun areas, and what I like about it is it's so airy. It just, when the breeze is blowing outdoors, it adds motion to that container, and it's just so pretty when you can have plants that add that motion element out in the garden. Purple fountain grass also is deer resistant, so for those of you who have deer in your garden, you won't need to worry about the deer browsing on your container combination. You can pair purple fountain grass with your favorite petunias. In this planter, we have it paired with a Supertunia Vista Paradise. Just a very simple look with the deep burgundy and the bright pinks. It's easy, it's crisp, it's clean. But if you wanted to, you could add in more annual color as well if you wanted more of a mixed combination. Purple fountain grass also is drought tolerant, does great not only in containers, but in the landscape as well. The grass gives interest from spring through the fall, and it's fun to watch as that planter continues to grow throughout the season and get larger and larger and just change almost week to week with how it looks. Colocasia coffee cups is another favorite here at Garden Crossings, and I have been using this in my planters for years, and I am never disappointed with how this turns out. Colocasia coffee cups is a nice tall upright thriller. It's typically about 3 but can get up to 5 foot tall with a big enough container. The more space you give it, the more water you give it, the bigger it's going to get. It is definitely a plant that loves the water. Oftentimes we'll also recommend planting it by like the water's edge, or if you are looking to float a plant in your pond, Colocasia coffee cups is a great plant to just set in that standing water type areas. It likes to be grown in part shade, although here in Michigan, I can grow mine in full sun with no problem. I just have to make sure that I'm giving them enough water throughout the season. We have them planted in our aquapot planters, which is a self-watering container. So we just fill that up every 3 to 5 to 7 days, depending on where we're at in the season. And it continues to water that plant day after day after day. I love how coffee cups has a really beautiful tropical feel to it. Obviously being in Michigan, we don't have a lot of tropical plants here. Really, we don't have any tropical plants here because they don't overwinter. So whenever I can find a plant that I can put in my containers and gives me the feel of being in Florida or somewhere down south, I always love to do that. Another interesting with the coffee cups is after a rain, they kind of are upward cupping the foliage on them. So rain will settle in that leaf, and if you tip it over, it pours out the water. So it's kind of a fun plant if you have children or grandchildren that you can show them after a rain what this plant has done and kind of tip it over. And it's always fun to find different ways to engage your younger generation in the garden. And coffee cups definitely is a plant that it's fun. It's fun for the young kids. So we have it planted up here in our aquapot with the sedum lemon coral, which is just an evergreen succulent type plant, along with Superbell's corallina. And it is such a beautiful combination. One thing that we do find is these planters do transition. So earlier on in the season, we were seeing a lot more of that sedum, but as that Superbells continue to put on more growth, it really has filled in and taken over that sedum a little bit to give just a different look later on in the season. Very simple, just 3 plants, the coffee cups, the sedum, and the Calibrachoa. Really looks cool in this planter. So I was just talking about how I love to have that tropical feel in my containers. And another way that I do that is I find palm trees, various different type of palm trees. Usually here in Michigan, when the palm trees are sent up, they're sold as a house plant. So I'll go to the house plant section of some of my favorite stores, and I'll look for these beautiful palms. So palms have that tropical feel. I also love, again, how they blow in the breeze. They have that nice upright habit. You know, they're very tall, and then they kind of branch out at the top, so that leaves a lot of room at the bottom, or at the bottom of the plant, but at the top of the container for me to underplant that palm with a lot of cool colors. When I buy those palms, usually there's only a couple stems on them, but as the season goes on, they continue to put on more growth and get fuller and fuller as the season go along. At my home this last year, I paired the palm with the Supertunia Tierra Pink and Tierra Blue, which are new Supertunia varieties for 2025. We also put in some Nemesia Bluebird, Angelonia White, and some Mini-Me Chartreuse Coleus. The thing that's interesting is when I plant these up earlier in the season, you can see a lot more of the plants that are in there. So I do pack it full of a lot of different varieties for earlier on in the season, knowing full well that as the season goes on, a lot of these plants may get buried and may never be seen again. But I like that. I like how the containers can transition throughout the season. So when you're planting your containers, just know that, you know, when you're planting for your earlier summer color, it may look totally different than what it does at the end of the season. You can see here how those petunias just took over, but the petunias are going to be the plant in my container that's going to give me the most color, and I really wanted a lot of color, and so those petunias did just that. But the Nemesia, the Angelonia, they're poking through, just not near as vigorous as the petunias that were planted in this container. Annual salvia is another fun plant to put in container combinations, as well as in the ground planting. So we're talking a lot about thrillers being used in container combinations, but we should also be thinking about thrillers that are used in the ground. So any plant that has a nice columnar upright habit can be that focal point or that thriller in your landscape as well. Salvia Unplugged is a new variety for 2025, and I was excited to try this one out in my aquapots last summer. It can get up to 30 inches tall, so definitely the bigger the pot you have, the bigger the plant can get. And the thing I like about it is it's got a crisp, clean, white flower, no deadheading needed, and those flowers, they stay clean all summer long. So a lot of times when you're planting white flowers, you'll find that they kind of brown up or just don't look as good as those flowers fade. But definitely that was not the case with the Salvia Unplugged White. I was very pleasantly surprised with that. Now for those of you in the south, you might be able to overwinter the salvia. It is hardy in zones 8 to 10, even though we are selling it as an annual. For those of you in the warmer climates, you might be able to continue to have that plant going year-round for you. The thing I like about salvia is they're an excellent plant for bringing pollinators to the garden. So the hummingbirds, the bees, the butterflies, all of those pretty little things that you like to see just fluttering around in your garden. Salvia are deer resistant, so if deer are an issue for you and they would like to browse on your containers or in your garden, they should stay away from salvia due to its fragrance. I have it paired with the saffron finch petunia, which is a gorgeous, crisp, clean yellow petunia. Also with sparkling amethyst verbena. I love the two-tone color of that sparkling amethyst, that purple and the white paired with that yellow. Such a stunning combination. And then I added just a little splash of the Nemesia Aromance Mulberry into this container, just to kind of give a trio of colors going on. As you can see in the pictures, the before picture and the after picture, it put on a lot of growth throughout the season and really, I think, turned out really pretty. We've also used the rock and purple salvia in some of the containers that we've done here at the greenhouse. So we'll have the palm tree as the tall thriller, and then we'll put these rock and purple kind of right along the base of the palm tree, so it kind of fills in that middle ground. And then we have it planted with various other annuals that will do more of the filler and the spiller look in these large combinations. Cypress Prince Tut is also a very cool grass for thrillers and container combinations. Prince Tut can get 30 to 48 inches tall, so nearly 4 foot tall, if you have a big enough pot that will allow for those roots to put on that much growth. Planted in the ground, no problem. 36 to 48 inches is definitely a height you could expect with Prince Tut. Prince Tut likes to be planted in full sun to part shade locations, and it does prefer more of a moderate to moist or wet soil location. Cypress grass are also a grass that you'll find on the water's edge, so if you've got a bog or if you have a pond or something that you want to float a grass in, the cypress grass can handle very wet conditions. It too, I think, has kind of a neat tropical-ish feel to it. As the summer goes on, it continues to put on more and more stalks for a thicker, fuller look. I love the large tufts at the top of the plant. They look kind of like little umbrellas. And when the plant is younger, they're a little bit more, I'm going to say sparse, even though that's not a good word. But as the season goes on, those tufts of those umbrellas, they continue to get thicker and thicker and fuller, adding a lot of interest to those containers. Prince Tut grass has interest from spring through the fall. And you're going to notice in the spring it's a little bit smaller, just a little bit more dainty looking. But by the end of the summer, it really becomes quite a big, dense, full grass in the landscape or in containers. We have it planted here with geraniums along with the Lobularia Snow Princess, and I think that just gives a very, a very nice, clean, not super lot going on look to this container. One thing I will say though, when you do have geraniums in your containers, they are deer resistant, so that's great. But you do need to go out and deadhead them about every week or so to continue to keep the fresh flowers coming and to keep that pot looking really just crisp and clean all summer long. That Lobularia Snow Princess, that's a great spiller and container combinations with those tiny white flowers. They just trail over, and the other thing, they smell really pretty. So they have an excellent fragrance to it. So if you're looking to add, a nice big thriller, some geraniums, and even a plant that gives you just a little bit of scent as you're sitting on your porch or on your patio, the Lobularia Snow Princess is going to do that. If you're looking for an annual that maybe isn't quite as aggressive as some of the ones that we've shown thus far, Angelonia is a nice upright thriller as well. Usually in my containers, 18, 20 or so inches is kind of about the height I normally get. They can get up to 30 inches tall depending on the variety. So Angel Face White, Wedgwood Pink, Perfectly Pink. Those are just some of the varieties of Angelonias that we use in our landscape as thrillers and in our container combinations. They like to be grown in full sun. They're a deer-resistant annual. And in addition to being beautiful in your containers and in your landscape, they also make a nice cut flower. So if you like to take some flowers and bring them in for enjoyment on your kitchen table, Angelonias are a very nice thriller for a cut flower arrangement. We do have some larger Angelonias, so if you're looking for ones that will get bigger, more the 30-inch tall variety, those would be our supers. We have super blue and super white. They're more aggressive and definitely get taller, but not only taller, they're just a bigger, fuller plant as well. Now, there's another series of Angelonia called the Cascade series. So Cascade are pink and white and blue. Those would be varieties that kind of go up and kind of cascade over. So they kind of have two roles that they play in a container combination. Not only are they a thriller, but they're kind of a filler spiller as well. So if you like the look of Angelonia, but want it to kind of fill in more in your containers, consider giving the Cascade series a look. If you're looking for an annual that's going to have the neighbors talking, the Emerald Isle alocasia is certainly going to create a buzz in the neighborhood. They're not called an elephant ear for nothing. The leaves on these alocasia Emerald Isle, they can get 18 to 24 inches tall or long by about 18 inches wide. Definitely, if you were looking for a plant to hide behind, the elephant ear is definitely something big enough that you can hide behind. It's hardy in zones 7 to 9, so in a lot of areas of the United States, it's going to act as a perennial for you, coming back year after year. For us here in Michigan, no such luck. We're a little bit too cold. The Emerald Isle likes to be planted in a part shade location, although last summer we had it in our full sun garden and it did fantastic. It's another one of those plants that gives you that fun tropical feel. If you are in the north and want to add some of the feelings of the tropics to your landscape, alocasia is another great choice for doing that. This is another fun one to watch as the summer goes on, because as they are, or when they're planted up, they're fairly short, maybe 12 inches tall or so, but by the end of the summer, they're over 4 foot tall with just giant leaves. And something that I know at the garden center here, when customers would be walking around, they would always kind of gravitate over to that container because it was very impressive. It had a lot of show, and something that they hadn't seen before was those giant leaves. We paired it with the begonia cherry cordial. I love that deep dark black foliage with those really fire engine red flowers. We also put a little bit of the Supertunia latte in there, kind of a white with purpley or brown veining. Interesting with Supertunia latte is whatever color you pair it with, I feel like that veining kind of takes on the color. So it might look purple in some situations, the veining. It might look more red or more pink. It just really all depends on the color flowers you're pairing it with. And then we did a little bit of ivy to trail over in addition to those Supertunias. And I was really happy with how this turned out this year. So happy, in fact, that I think this is a color combination, plant combination that we would love to do again this coming season. We've talked a lot about container combinations for sun, so I thought we better throw in a couple for shade as well. Actually, this container combination can be grown in sun or shade, and it's using Coleus. I know for myself, when we first started growing Coleus, I didn't know a lot about them, but it was my assumption that Coleus were annuals for shade gardens. But much to my surprise, after learning more and more about Coleus, I found out that actually some varieties, the more sun they get, the more vibrant the colors are. So they can be grown in sun if you want the really vibrant colors to come out, or if they're in your shade gardens, they're going to be just a little bit more muted. They also may not get quite as big in shade gardens as they would do in sun gardens, but it's an option. It's an option for those of you who shade is what you have in your garden. So a lot of Coleus have nice upright mounding habits. So if you're looking for something tall to put into the containers, a lot of the varieties of Coleus are tall and upright. Here we have a picture of the Albrido Coleus in an aqua pot, and you can see just how nice and full that it fills out that container. This would be a mono planting, meaning only one plant in the pot. But with Albrido, there's just so much color going on that even though there is just the one plant, there's a lot of color variations to enjoy. Also, we have a picture here of the Mini-Me watermelon in the landscape. And you can see how it is a nice upright thriller with these saffron finch petunias planted around it. It's just standing nice and tall there, nice focal point with all that beautiful yellow all around. You can pair Coleus with begonias or impatiens for more of a mixed planter for the shade. Or if you want to create a mixed planter for sun, pair them with petunias or calibrachoa or sweet potato vine for a really pretty sun combination using the Coleus plants. And the last combination of the day is Cleome Senorita Rosalita. So this is an annual that for a very long time we used at the upper level of our waterfall. We liked it because it got tall, like 3 foot tall in that location. It could handle the wind as the winds were whipping across the cornfield. And also in that hot sun, it tended to be a little bit dry. And Senorita Rosalita took it like a champ. This is also a great annual for container combinations. Likes to be grown in full sun, and as mentioned, it's very wind tolerant. So if you have an area you're looking to put a container in that gets a lot of the wind, the Cleome can handle those windy type situations. It's also a great plant for attracting pollinators to the garden. It's got beautiful pink flowers on it. And this combination, we have it paired with our 3-in-1 combination, Rock and Rush. So we use the Senorita as the thriller. We planted it at the back of the pot because our 3-in-1 combinations, what they are is they're a container that has 3 plants planted in it. So you can take this 3-in-1 and put them in your container combinations for an instant kind of mixed look of flowers, opposed to, you know, having your flowers planted and giving them some time to kind of fill in and mingle. These are already filled in and mingled for you. So this combination has the Biden's Goldilocks Rocks, which is a beautiful yellow bloom, paired with a Super Tunia Raspberry Rush Petunia, which has kind of a really unique flower form with that hot pink flower with that just little splash of white on it. It gives a lot of interest, I think. And then also in that combination is the Super Bina Whiteout, which has nice big white flowers. So it really kind of ties the pinks, the whites, and the yellows together to create this beautiful combination. If you have any questions or comments on today's video, please feel free to leave them in the comments below. As I mentioned at the get-go, one of our viewers had watched and said, "Hey Heidi, can you talk on thrillers?" And I thought, you know what, that's a great idea. So that's what came about from your comments, was this video from today. If you have questions on any of the thrillers I talked about or any of the combinations we put together, I'd love to hear about it. And if you have any ideas for videos you'd like me to put together in the future, again, please leave those in the comments, because I'm always looking for ideas of things that you are looking to hear about. If you're new to our channel, I welcome you to subscribe. Thanks for watching. I'm Heidi from Garden Crossings.